So I think one of the most interesting and central questions in political philosophy is about property. What is property? How uh, how does one justly acquire property? What should be property? And who should property go to? Um, and I don't think that any philosophical discussion of this issue would be complete without discussing John Locke and his ideas about natural rights. Um, According to Locke, a person first owns himself uh, and his own mind and his body, and he then own and then he can make property out of other things by mixing his labor with it, such that by building a house on a piece of land, the person comes to own that piece of land. Um, so what he proposed was basically the labor theory of property. This was later taken up by Adam Smith and turned into the labor theory of value, and that the value of an object of an object or a commodity is the value that labor has added to it. Um, Both of these tend to presuppose that nature has no inherent value. All value comes from humans. An idea which I'll attack later in this video. But for now, I'll point out that actually, Adam Smith formulated the labor theory of value, which you probably know more famously from Karl Marx, who actually extended sort of brought out sort of the full implications of the labor theory of value, such that capitalist economists abandoned the theory altogether. So you got the marginal theory of value. And so, I certainly think there are problems with labor theory of value. At least which is, as I explained, the idea that it values nature at zero. Um, but I also think that a capitalist investment in capital can add value to labor. The capital machinery increases the productivity of labor, and but anyway, what is really interesting about that is a lot of people think of Karl Marx as just being anti-property, when really what he's saying he is in a sense trying to argue for restorative justice of the worker's value. And I think that by turning the discussion from property to value, I think it gets at the heart of the issue that when you add labor to something, it's not so much that you own the material of that thing as much as you own the value that you've added to a commodity. And of course, when workers produce a product for sale, uh, most of them don't ever own the product itself. They own a portion of the value that they've contributed to the making of that product. And I think what Karl Marx was saying essentially is that they don't receive the full value of their labor because the capitalists appropriate as part of that. Now I think, and I say with Henry George in saying that value is not so much appropriated in capital as it is by rent, by land, essentially. Um, but in any case, I think one problem that I have with Marx and many of his detractors is they don't make a distinction between owning a plot of land and owning a factory or piece of machinery. I think for Karl Marx, both of those are exploitation. Whereas for anti-Marxists, it's then both those things are perfectly within an individual's freedom to do, and it's tyranny to prevent any person from doing that. Um, Because I would say, wait a minute, we need to make a distinction between, uh, you know, what between what has been created, uh, between what value has been added by labor versus what value inheres in nature itself. Um, and and so I think we also need to differentiate between common and private property, and understand that the value of nature should not be owned by any one person. That value is to be shared among the people and other life forms on Earth. Uh, and so that's why I'm against. That's why I sometimes say I'm against private property and land. But when I say I'm against private property and land, I don't mean that land there should be a free for all with land. I think that instead land should be held in the commons, and when private appropriation of land or private possession of it should come as should be compensated for by a land value tax, by paying rent to society for the use of that land. And the same goes for any kind of extraction of minerals from the earth, any kind of timber industry, any industry that's that extracts natural resources. They ought to sort of pay a certain price for what for the value, for the natural value that they're taking away from the commons. And instead of putting a price on such extraction, would then make it cheaper to buy recycled goods than to buy goods that sort of plunder the earth, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, I think that property is essentially, in a sense, you never really own the matter. You never really own the material things themselves. What you own is value that you've contributed, and so that's why if your property is stolen or destroyed, you're entitled to compensation for the value of that product. And of course, value is it's certainly a difficult thing to quantify value, but money essentially is an attempt to do just that. And so, well, in an imperfect system, money does serve that function to a good enough degree that I think we ought to be able to think of money in terms of value, and ought to accordingly adjust our economy so that money reflects value. And I feel like I don't have enough time in this video to sort of reflect on how value should be determined. Certainly the market would play a role in that in terms of supply and demand, but there's a little bit more complexity to that that I can't really get into now. But there's my thoughts for now. Peace.